Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I are set to preview the Central Division as this is, the 7th of October that we're recording this. 5:15, the Nashville Predators have just defeated the San Jose Sharks 4-1 in their first game, in the first game of the season, also the first game for those two teams. So, yes, we're a tidbit behind, but I blame Europe. Yeah,
I blame Europe.
It's Europe's fault. Maybe it's no. You know what? Better yet, this is all Russia's fault. That's a better. They're the scapegoat. It's easy to blame them for things right now. So we'll stick with that. It was a fun game, and it's fun to see those games in Europe being played. But I only mention that because we do know that the Nashville Predators will win at least one game this year. So. That's it's now in the books. They did it. We did it, boys. We took a game. I do like that when you go and you look at the standings now, the San Jose Sharks are in last place. No, everyone else hasn't played a game, but the Sharks are in last place now. It's the 7th or 8th in the Pacific. It's wonderful. The Central Division, Justin. Well, first off, how are you, Justin?
I am great, Mark. How was your trip?
Oh, it was great. Mackinac Island. If you've never been to Mackinac Island, it's a pretty unique spot. I'll say. If you like islands, it's nothing like any other island you've been to. Like I've been to Hawaii and Ireland and Iceland. These different tropical kind of, or like just. International type of places, and then you go to Mackinac Island and it's like somebody took a 1920s movie and just dropped it onto this island. I think that's a decent description of what it's like. And then there's just a lot of fudge. A lot of fudge.
And no cars.
Yes, no cars. That's what I'm saying is it's like 1920s, you get
a lot of
horse and buggy. Yep. A lot of, we had a great time. We did this horse and carriage buggy tour thing. Not something I would have normally done, but my mother-in-law can't walk super well, so it was just easier to do it that way. And my wife's pregnant, so it's hard to ride a bike when you're 6 months pregnant. At least that's what I hear. So we did we did this thing, and because I don't know, nobody wanted to get off at certain points. The girl took us a different way, and we ended up on this really high spot in the island where you can see kind of the whole harbor and the bridge and all this really cool views. And apparently it's in the top 100 views in National Geographic or something. So it was pretty cool. But I digress. Let's jump into the Central Division. We've decided on this show, we're splitting it up. We're doing 4-4. We're going to hit the Minnesota Wild, the Chicago Blackhawks. Unfortunately, we do have to still talk about them, and the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets. So, Justin, it's your choice. Where do you want to start with the Central Division?
Oh,
at least those four teams. You have to. You can't go to the other teams. You have to do one of those four.
Let's start with the Winnipeg Jets because they were a team I predicted to go to the playoffs in this division, and they completely bummed me out last year. Yeah. And probably one of my favorite goaltenders in the league too. So let's dive in.
I will say, if you haven't been listening to the show for the past 5 seasons, is this our 5th season or 6th season? I forget.
It's the 5th. Yeah,
it's the 5th. Yeah, it's the 5th. So if you haven't listened to the past 4 seasons, you would know. At the beginning of our time together in 2017, which hit the first season, that would have been Hellebuck, really his first hurrah as a really good goal. Like he had played the year before, he played 56 games, a .907 save percentage. The Jets weren't great that year, and he just looked okay. But Justin was a huge believer in Hellebuck. You were talking about Hellebuck when he was like at
Michigan.
UMass, yeah, and he certainly panned out to be a great goaltender. That it was that year that they went to the conference finals, and he of course Did he win the Vezina that year?
I don't remember, actually. That's a very good question.
Did he win a Vezina, or did he just get nominated for one? I think he just got nominated for one, right?
Yeah, I think you might be right. I'm about to Google this shit because it'll drive me nuts.
Yeah, sorry. He won in 1920. So he won it in the year before COVID, right? Was that the year? No, that was the COVID year. That was the COVID year. Yeah.
Sounded like you said 1920. Like,
sorry. Yes, he won it he won it playing for the Ottawa Silver Seven in 1920, and now
beautiful.
He has risen from the grave to come back and play goalie again. This time with a lot more pads.
A lot more.
Okay. Well, let's dive into this team. What are your, now after being severely disappointed by them last year, where do you stand with the Winnipeg Jets?
Boy, they are at a crossroads, I will say. This offseason, they obviously lose, Kopp, he goes to the Rangers during the deadline, gets traded there. So they lose a big piece down the middle. But, obviously they bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, hoping to make an impact at the center position. Kind of struggles there, to be quite honest, to find his footing to start off. And, they had Stasny who was in there. They were both rotating on the wing and playing center. The lines just never seemed to really settle in all year long. You had Mark Scheifele missing time, but obviously this year you come in and first things first, Blake Wheeler is no longer the captain of this Winnipeg Jets team.
Stripped of the captaincy, yeah. Right.
New coach, new head coach. So now Paul Maurice moves on. He's, it sounded like he was going to take a year off, but, Florida comes a-calling, and you don't say no to that team, I guess, and that weather, I suppose. But, Rick Bowness comes in. I'm not sure, if he's going to be able to, really make the changes I think this team needs. But
they're going to definitely be better defensively.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Or they'll die trying.
Yeah, and Pierre-Luc Dubois really hasn't come out and said he's committed. I think this offseason they had so many interviews. He mentioned something about Montreal, and it gets blown out of proportion. They're expecting. Actually,
I think it was his agent.
Yes, that's right.
It wasn't even him. His agent just said, "Yeah, he wants to play in Montreal."
Right.
And what a dick move, because it just makes the guy like, what's he gonna do? He's gonna have to sign
Fleury. When his agent put out that picture of him with the sword going through him and shit. So,
that was funny. That was funny. True. And that's Marc-Andre Fleury, who can do or say anything he wants because he's the nicest son of a bitch in the world. Whereas Pierre-Luc Dubois has only alienated himself in every place he's ever been.
Right, only.
Which I guess at this point is only two places. But, Winnipeg, I mean, everything starts from there, right? Like, you have to ask, what does taking the captaincy away from Blake Wheeler do? Because you didn't trade away Blake Wheeler. You also haven't named a new captain. I don't know that they will. And the vibe that I got, this is so funny. Because what was it, like 3 or 4 years ago? Everyone was talking about how this leadership group in Winnipeg was like the standard. We're looking at the way that they're doing things, and it's so good. There's accountability, and things are going well. And then they started losing, and then all of a sudden, everyone was a dick. And Blake Wheeler, take away the captaincy because he's creating a hostile work environment. Like, it just goes to show you that when you're winning, people will put up with more, but also when you're winning, people go, see the accountability's working. And then when you're losing, you go, it's just so tough to be in this room because, there's so much pressure and we're losing. And when you try to hold people accountable and you still lose, it does get very frustrating. But anyway, I don't know that Blake Wheeler having the captaincy stripped is going to change anything in terms of his leadership in the room or the vibe in the room, or what have you. The only thing it changes is he's not going to organize team parties anymore.
Right. So. I mean, look, it reminds me of when they stripped Barlow of the captaincy and gave it to Joe Thornton, right? It was just like...
At least they gave it to someone.
Well, there's that part too, yeah. Well, I mean, they had someone in place they could give it to, right? So now you're kind of looking for an identity. But to me, removing a captain doesn't necessarily change anything as far as team attitude or, it's like putting guys on notice. That's pretty much all it is. It's like sending out an official memo that says, hey, shit's going to happen at some point. Just a heads up.
Well, you're kind of saying we don't see you as as one of the core, maybe.
Well, at 36, come on.
Yeah, he's still point per game player almost last year in 60 points in 65 games. I mean, that's at least a 70-point season over the 82 game stretch. I mean, he's no slouch. It's not as if he's just garbage. Guy.
Yeah, he's still a quality player, and I think Winnipeg, is happy to keep him. I mean, I don't think anybody's taken his contract. So, but the bigger question mark for me is, you got Mark Scheifele. He's coming up on UFA status in 2 seasons. So is he going to hang around? Pierre-Luc Dubois, right? He's already said, his agent said, Montreal, and he hasn't formally committed to the team and hasn't signed an extension yet. So I think until he does so, you look at this forward group and say there could be, a massive rebuild happening here pretty soon. I mean, luckily for them, they've got Kyle Connor on a tremendous looking, almost Nathan McKinnon-esque deal of a, contract right now.
Yeah, for a guy that in his sleep scores 30 goals.
Right.
Almost had 50 goals last year.
Just one of the more underrated goal scorers. No one ever talks about this guy, but he's just night in and night out just scores goals, right? He's essentially over the last 3.5 seasons been a point per game guy.
Yeah.
And just really driving that offense for Winnipeg. And so, I guess we'll see, how this forward group shakes up. I will say the one nice thing, positive you could put on this forward group is, yes, Kyle Connor signed, but you've got Cole Perfetti coming up this year. And, hopefully he's supposed to be, at least in the eyes of many, he's one of the top picks for potential rookie of the year.
Yeah, be able to contribute at least. You're hoping for 30 to 40 points out of Perfetti for sure.
Yeah, he's going to get, probably top 6 minutes without a doubt between, you're probably going to have Connor and Ehlers up on that top line, but you could put, Wheeler and Perfetti on that second line and, swap out those centers however you feel like it. But
if you ignore what happened last year and you look at this team up and down, really, the forward group is not the problem. This forward group is in their top 6. Is there a team in the Central Division outside of Colorado who you go, oh, they're way better than Winnipeg's top 6? In my mind, no, they may not have they do have the superstar. They've got Kyle Connor in their top 6. So you've got your, I'm kind of looking like Minnesota has Kaprizov. I guess you'd say Kyle Connor's kind of their Kaprizov, but maybe not quite as impactful. But they have Wheeler, Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, Dubois. 5 of their top, quote unquote, top 6 players are all guys who have the potential to put up at least 60 points.
Yeah, really, besides Colorado, I think the only other team I might, take their top 6 over Winnipeg's might be St. Louis, right? But what I will say is, given Thomas and Kyrie's just recent surgence, right, that's great for them. But at least Winnipeg has established players, right? These guys have been doing it for a while.
Yeah. Not that Ryan O'Reilly isn't established.
No.
Or Tarasenko.
I meant like Thomas and Kyrie, right? Those guys are just now finding their next level. So,
right. And you want to see them do it again and again. Whereas in Winnipeg, these guys have done it multiple times.
Right. Exactly.
Something just went wrong last year. But I think really the place that we got to look is on that back end. The back end has been a mess since Dustin Byfuglien randomly said, I would prefer to be fishing. And he just went and fished. He just left, right? He left right before the season was going to start, and they've struggled ever since. And they've never really been able to get it back. That, and they lose Jacob Trouba too. they did get Neil Pionk in that deal, who's formidable, but not quite as impactful as a Jacob Trouba. Not going to put up the same kind of points that Trouba can put up in terms of actually scoring goals too, where he's a goal scoring threat. But their defense as a whole is maybe average, a little below average, from what I can kind of decipher when I look at them, and they're a little bit old on the older side. So that there's something missing with this defense in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we look at a team that just played today, the Nashville Predators, right? And you look and you have Ryan McDonough, you have Roman Josi, you have an established superstar on both your first and second lines. Now again,
and it's not knocking Josh Morrissey. I really do like Josh Morrissey, but as a number 2.
Right. I think they're missing that true workhorse, that true all-around defenseman who can play, contribute offensively, because that's where the game's going, right? You look at, the top teams in this league, they all have that superstar defenseman that can really produce, right? You look at, the Lightning, they've got Victor Hedman, Nashville with Roman Josi, Colorado with Cale Makar. I mean, you look up and down, and even St. Louis.
But even the Chicago Blackhawks have a top
defenseman. Jones. Yeah, so I mean, really, that's the big key they're missing, because then when you have a guy that can contribute at both ends of the ice and play those big 25, 24-minute games, that brings balance to the rest of the lineup, and guys are slotted in where they really should be instead of playing against, matchups where maybe they fall short, right?
Yeah, and that's going to be Winnipeg's challenge, and in particular, Rick Bowness's challenge, is to figure out how this team plays a much more team defense type of game, which is what he thrived in Dallas. They definitely, I mean, Dallas at times was tough to watch. The fortunate thing is that they, I think, have more goal scorers up front, so that'll help them. But can they get this team to play a team defensive game? Because, I mean, Blake Wheeler, Scheifele, Ehlers, Dubois, these aren't guys that are known for their two-way play. And that is going to be the challenge. Like, who's going to step in and kind of take those reins from Rick Bowness and say, yeah, I'm going to be your two-way center and be responsible defensively. Which is, in some respects, the reason why on such a bad team that they were last year, that all these guys put up numbers. Like, you look at them and you're like, man, their top 6, they were all killing it. Like, they all had a point per game almost. And yet they were pretty far out of the playoffs. They missed the playoffs by 8 points. Oh, they were way out of it. And yet all their guys were scoring a bunch of goals. So the goal scoring wasn't the problem, but maybe they were scoring those goals at the expense of, taking too many chances and hanging Connor Hellebuck out to dry, because, I mean, Hellebuck it still looks good, but his numbers, at a 9-10 save percentage, and you're still letting in almost 3 goals a game, he's just getting lit up. There's way too many shots on goal.
Right, his goals saved above expected were 16.7. Eric Comrie, the backup who was there last year, 10.3 goals saved above expected. So these guys were doing their job in net. Right, it wasn't at any point their fault why they were losing games. Again, when you look at this team as far as goals for, goals against, they were at a -5 goal differential. Which especially when we look at that top 6 and say these guys were all almost at a point per game. Clearly, you look at the defense giving up terrible chances, and you can also point the finger at this bottom 6 and say, they're just not contributing either. So, and a lot of that has to do with losing a guy like, Andrew Kopp. When you don't, have that kind of depth scoring down the middle, it's gonna hurt you.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. When you consider who they lost and what they gained, it does make you wonder, they didn't go out and acquire anybody of significance.
Sam Gagner, that was it.
Sam Gagner, and we're not, I'm not writing any books about Sam Gagner, other than the time that he had 8 points in one night. That was pretty fun in Edmonton.
Those days.
But really, do we see this team being any better than they were last year? An 89-point team in a really good division. I mean, yeah, they were 4 wins away. Like 4 wins flip, and they probably could be in the playoffs and have beaten out Nashville. Those 4 wins, when you look up and down this division and even the conference, this whole conference has gotten better over the offseason, and I can't say that the Jets are a better team today than they were at the end of the year. Or I'll say before the trade deadline, because losing Kopp and that hurts obviously, and they haven't really replaced them.
No, I agree. And as far as my ceiling and floor is concerned with this team, right? I look at it, all the teams in this division, all the teams in this conference as a whole, and I think the teams that finish 1 through 5 above them, I could make an argument and say, maybe outside of losing Kadri in Colorado, they all probably improved. Or going to look.
Yeah, Colorado probably about stayed the same.
Right?
Is that at which they're still the best team in the league by staying the same and losing an 85-point player. Somehow they didn't get really much worse. Although I will say their goaltending, in my mind, did take a hit. I don't know how important it will be because it's not as if Kemper was a world beater in the playoffs, but
right.
I think that Colorado is beatable now, whereas last season it seemed like no one's going to beat this team. Although did I pick Tampa Bay to win that series? I think I might have.
I did.
I think I might have because I think I finally was like, man, I can't pick against this team anymore.
Right.
They're just torching me all the time. And then I pick them and then they lose. Okay, so the Winnipeg Jets, I'll give you my floor and ceiling. And just in case you haven't been listening to all our previews, we've been doing a floor and a ceiling. The floor is kind of where we see this team, assuming that the whole thing doesn't blow up, tons of injuries, yada, yada. Kind of where we see this team at the bottom. And then obviously the ceiling is, a great season. Everything goes well. I would say I'm going to give you a great example of a ceiling season for a team. The Nashville Predators last year, that was a ceiling season for the Nashville Predators. It's not knocking them, not saying anything bad about them, but how many of their players last year had either career years or a complete resurgence to coming back to this place where, Matt Duchene, yeah, he's a number one center now. Like, and Philip Forsberg had a lights out year, and Ryan Johansson is back to his old self. Like, this team had a fantastic year. Everyone played at their heights. It reminds me of Calgary when Giordano won the Norris. Everyone had career years up to that point for the Calgary Flames, and they ended up losing in the first round, but they had a ceiling type of year. And where I see the ceiling for the Winnipeg Jets, I think that they could be a playoff team. I think that Rick Bowness can come in and help them to have a Nashville-esque type of year where they figure out the defensive side of the game. Cole Perfetti is a 50-point guy, and their top 6 is the best in this division, and their defense is good enough, and Connor Hellebuck has yet another, a 9-10, maybe better save percentage year where he looks like a potential Vezina Trophy winner again. And if they are able to do that, then Winnipeg's probably in the playoffs. Their floor to me is if things really don't change, and we see a very similar Winnipeg team, frustrations boil over, and you're hearing Blake Wheeler's on the trading block. Mark Scheifele maybe will try to deal him, and they start talking about moving someone, at least one player in that top 6 to, quote, shake the room up kind of thing. If we start to hear that, then that probably means that this team has finished right where they finished last year, but maybe a few fewer points, right in that 80 to 85 mark. They're not going to be as bad as Chicago or Arizona. There's just no way. But I'd say 6th place is probably the the basement for me, or the floor. Sorry, we don't need to get into the basement. Nobody wants to be in the basement. That's where I record this podcast, is in the basement. So, okay, where do you want to go next?
Well, I got to give you my floor and ceiling here. My ceiling and
you said the words, and in my brain,
said the words.
In my brain, you did it already.
No, okay, I'll make it quick. So, as far as ceiling is concerned for this team, to me, they're missing the playoffs. I don't think there's any way they get in. New coach, new system. I just think they, I think, again, the teams above them 1 through 5 in this division, I think, are just better than them all around. And I think, even Nashville, I think they're still going to be successful and, probably even a little bit better. Yeah, they're the best team in the league. And, they got the yeah, I'm going to stop there.
They are on pace to win the President's Trophy right now.
They are. They really are. So for me, I think this is a team that, as far as ceiling is concerned, misses out by 1 or 2 points, doesn't get in. And then as far as, basements are concerned, obviously I think they're going to finish better than Chicago and Arizona, but that's pretty much where it ends up, where they, maybe I'd say, 3-4 wins less than last year. But I think, eventually they're just, going to start to bottom out a little bit and, give some of the younger guys like Cole Perfetti a little bit more ice time. And you might see a guy like, God, who knows? You might see Wheeler on the block, Scheifele maybe on the block at some point. So we'll see.
Who do you like better in goal, Hellebuck or Ottinger right now?
Right now? Oh, gosh. If I had to say right now, I'd take Ottinger.
Okay.
Okay. But again, that's if I had, one series right now, because, given his playoff success, he just looks phenomenal. But I think long term, if I was building, again, the age comparison, right, I'm going to take Ottinger. But I think,
sure, yeah, for one season.
Yeah, but, Hellebuck, I think, is the better goaltender. He's proven it. He's got the Vezina. He's got the hardware. And I think, if he gets in a situation where he gets good defensive structure and guys that can move the puck on the back end quickly out of the zone, I think he could, have numbers, much better than what Ottinger had in Dallas with under bonus. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of why I asked, because Ottinger obviously thrived under Rick Bowness and the system that he had there. And I wonder if maybe his numbers were inflated just a little bit because of their defensive structure and because of the looseness in Winnipeg. A 9-10 save percentage could easily turn into a 9-2 save percentage under a defensive coach. And then we really are in the conversation of a Vezina Trophy again for Hellebuck.
Yeah.
Which there hasn't been too many two-time Vezina Trophy winners here lately. So can anyone fight with Shesterkin right now and Vasilevsky? We'll see. Okay, let's roll on to let's go up to the top for a minute here. Let's go to Minnesota. We'll talk Minnesota. We'll get to the Chicago Blackhawks next. I don't want to talk about two teams that will likely be in the basement of this division right in a row. So let's talk Minnesota Wild. What do you think the Minnesota Wild can do to build upon what they have already accomplished since Kirill Kaprizov got there? Like, how do they get to that next level?
Well, I think that's, again, they're, everybody knows the cap situation with this team, right? For the next 3 seasons, basically, they got to deal with the Parise, Suter buyouts. So really what they need to get to that next level is the young guys on those cheap contracts to take the next steps. And I'm talking Matthew Boldy, right? He had a breakout season.
Had a great year,
Yeah, for Minnesota. They need Marco Rossi to step up, right? The young draft pick at 21. He's coming in for his first full year. So they need him to have a really good season if they want to take that next step. And not only that, but they've got Sam Steele, who, in Anaheim, again, this guy's only 24 years old. He was a young guy that there was a lot of hope, a lot of promise for being a first-round draft pick, granted number 30 overall in 2016, but he was still a guy who was projected to be, in the long-term future for the Ducks and was, suddenly not qualified last year. Maybe not his best year, but, those young guys, I think, and then you can throw in Tyson Jost too, because this is another young guy that they brought in this offseason. Those are the guys.
He was a trade, if you remember, right, for Nico Sturm last year. Really a salary dump, but yeah, he was a trade.
Right. And so these are the young guys that I think, they need to step up and take those next, get to the next level if this team as a whole is going to get to that next level. And I think that's, obviously easy to say for any team, right? You always want your young guys to grow and get to that next level. But I think it's more important for a team like Minnesota, who's so cap strapped that they can't afford to really make too many moves, right? I mean, really, if you look at this team as a whole, as far as, contracts and things, their only move is to move out Matt Dumba. And do you want to, sacrifice what he brings on the back end for this team just to go out and try to hope that you find a forward? Because, I mean, listen, if they think they're going to go out and have like a Seth Jones, Ryan Johansson situation on their hand, just a 1-for-1, I don't think that's going to happen.
No, not with him being a UFA.
Right, and every team knows they're strapped against the cap, so they're going to try to fleece Minnesota for this guy if they want to get Dumba off their hands.
Well, and they're going to have to re-sign Matthew Boldy at the end of this year, and based off of Boldy's last season, putting up 39 points in 47 games. You extrapolate that out, and he probably this year is, barring injury, probably a 60-point guy, and maybe puts in 25 goals. He had 15 last year, so you're probably looking for at least a 25, maybe a 30-goal season out of Matt Boldy. So if that's the kind of season he puts up, and if he does more, he's already in the conversation for making at least 6 in his next contract, if not more. And then suddenly you're, where are you going to get the money to bring these guys in? Next year they'll have $14 million in projected space, but that's losing Dumba, losing Frederick Gaudreau, who's been such an important part of that bottom 6, and this team is going to have to figure out how to do this and navigate this. And they really they went all in for last season, and it did not work at all in terms of a long playoff run. It just didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, it rarely ever does, right? I mean, so many teams go all in every year, and of course.
How can I just backtrack and just say, how dumb was it of Kirill Kaprizov's agent to sign that 4-year, $9 million a year, like $9 million cap hit for Kirill Kaprizov? He should be making, he could have just signed a couple year deal and be making 12 or 13 in 2 years. That deal is a sweetheart deal already at $9 million.
But maybe that's a testament to how good of a GM Bill Guerin is, right? Because if you think about it, Kirill Kaprizov's going to be 29 when his deal's up. And so, you give him an 8-year deal at 37 years old. I might be a little hesitant to give him full 8, but, hey, you might look at those, again, when the cap goes up and where it's at in 26, 27, you might not even give a crap. So,
right.
Who knows how it's going to play
within the next, 4 years, it'll be up over, they're estimating like $10 million.
Yeah, but here's the other crazy part, right? Kirill the Thrill is doing this without a legit number one center. Imagine if they had a guy, or say, in 2 or 3 years, Marco Rossi ends up being that legit number one, center. Now he's got a guy who can really dish him the puck, and you might see, Kirill the Thrill with 120, 125 points a season. What kind of contract is he going to get then? I mean, it's just going to be gangbusters for him, but
gangbusters. Yeah.
You could see a $14 million contract at that point. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, that Matt Zuccarello deal, I think a lot of us went, ooh, $6 million for Matt Zuccarello. And then he only went up and put at 1.13 points a game, 79 points. Right. Ryan Hartman has a career year, 34 goals. He's signed for still another 2 more years at $1.7 million.
Yeah, and what a steal.
So, I mean, they have salary cap issues because of those 2 big deals that are signed. I mean, they have plenty of good deals throughout the rest of their cap hits. Now, as far as I think there's no question this defense is still one of the better defenses in the division. I mean, they're stacked up front with Spurgeon, Brodin, and Dumba, and rounding out the rest of the defense core, Alex Goligoski still appears to have it at 37 years old. What do you think of the bottom of Minnesota's defensive core?
Well, I mean, I will say you talked about those big three. I think outside of that, right, the one guy that I look at is Jacob Middleton, right? He was brought in a trade through San Jose. I think he is a defenseman's defensive type of guy, right? He's not going to produce a ton of points. He's strictly there to play defense and does it very well. So I think if he continues to play that kind of hockey, that grind out defensive game that he brings, I think he's going to fit in very well with this team and bring an element that I think they're going to value a lot. And I think, especially at, just a little over $2 million for this guy, they're getting a steal in my opinion. I think he plays very well in that top four and is going to give a guy like Goligoski the opportunity to play, less minutes against the big lines. He can play on that third pairing and then come in and be your second power play guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And that'll pay dividends. And you've got John Merrill in here, who I think is still a very serviceable, number 5, number 6 defenseman. I mean, listen, he's not going to again give you a ton of points, but he brings a reliable, steady game, and I think that's exactly what Minnesota needs, especially at the cost savings that he brings at 1.2. So I think they're getting a deal there, and so to me, I have no worries about this defense. And worst case scenario, if they have to move Matt Dumba at some point this year to try to bring in, a centerman or some offense or, something to replace Kevin Fiala, I'm not worried if they have to go with the rest of this group. I think there's enough talent there. They'll be okay. And then, of course, they've got Kalen Addison, who I think could be a guy who's, going to try to make this team. I'm not sure what they're thinking this year for him, if they're going to send him down. But, they've got some talent there. And so,
yeah, had a offensive year for the Iowa Wild in the AHL, 34 points in 43 games. So no slouch. It's tough for defensemen to put up big points in the AHL. So you wouldn't be mad about having an offensively minded defenseman make your team,
right,
given the rest of the crew here. I guess the last question is Marc-Andre Fleury. Can he do it again? Is he going to have another productive season, another above average, above that 9-10 save percentage in a full year here with this team and just keep on rolling? Because it all relies on him, in my opinion, because if he goes down, Philip Gustafsson as your backup, it'll be hard pressed to, not that he played poorly in the AHL last year, but for the Ottawa Senators, who were terrible, he didn't look great, and that's who he was flipped for, Cam Talbot. That's who they got in that trade. So you're putting a lot of stock into a 37-year-old to basically beat. If he goes down, you're done. So
yeah. Well, so here's the thing, right? They really their hands were kind of tied. I think they brought in Marc-Andre, re-signed him thinking that Talbot and Fleury were going to be the combo, right? And that would have been great. That would have been a phenomenal combo. I would have been very happy with that. But obviously, Cam Talbot was not. He wanted to get moved. He wanted to be a number one and not have to worry about, splitting, 40 and 40 with another goaltender, right?
Which, hey, I got to give him props. At 35 years old, he goes, I want this. He gets traded. Now, granted, Anton Forsberg, he's been pretty good. He was good for Ottawa last year. Ottawa gave him that 3-year extension. He had a .917 save percentage for the Sens. He looked great. I don't think there's a guarantee that Cam Talbot doesn't share the net with Forsberg.
But, I think there's less of a threat, right?
But you've got a chance. I don't think you have much of a chance. Like you saw, he played probably better than Fleury did down the stretch too, and they still said, no, we're going with Fleury in the playoffs, and it didn't work out for them, and maybe they should have stuck with Talbot.
Right.
I think Ottawa's got a legit chance to make some noise in the Atlantic. Now, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs, but he's going to get a chance to be the number one there for sure. But he'll be a UFA at the end of the year, and then he can go wherever he wants. So it's just, I guess you're hedging your bet, because the Ottawa Senators probably don't make the playoffs, but the Minnesota Wild almost certainly make the playoffs, and that's the trade-off, I guess. And I guess it's not as if Ottawa can't trade Talbot at the deadline to, say, the Colorado Avalanche.
Ooh.
If something is awry, if they're far enough out of the playoffs, not a bad potential position to be in. I know they've got Georgiev, but we'll
who's to say his numbers won't be
right
below average? But I mean, that team's got enough scoring to keep them in games anyways if they're getting subpar goaltending. So the question is Andre Fleury an upgrade over Cam Talbot? And I don't think it moves the needle in either direction, in my opinion. But obviously, the downgrade is now your backup situation is not as good, right? When you had Talbot, Fleury, now you've got Gustafsson and Fleury. So that's a downgrade, in my opinion. Unfortunately, Talbot won it out. So you got to make do with what you got. And so, who knows? Maybe we see. Wouldn't it be funny if end of the season Ottawa's out of it and Minnesota says, "Hey, we'd like to get Talbot back here, please."
Right. Can you just send him back? We just need him for a few.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you got to think this is. I'll go floor ceiling. My floor. I got to think this team's a playoff team because of Marc-Andre Fleury, Kirill Kaprizov, the depth that they have at defense, and the guys that they can just put out there forever. And their depth throughout their forward group, like guys in their bottom six putting up 40 points. They are so deep. They also punish other teams. They're not a fun team to play against. I do think they miss Kevin Fiala. I don't think that they finish with 113 points. But I think that this team is a playoff team. So my floor is like they're a wild card. I could see them falling a little bit and being a wild card. But my ceiling for them is likely right around where they were, somewhere in the 50 win category, and that puts them 2-3 in this division, and they keep on rolling. As long as they're getting above average goaltending because of that defense and Kirill Kaprizov, they are going to roll. So it's just a matter of winning a round. Come playoff time, can they sneak past the St. Louis or Colorado or Nashville, whoever they have to end up playing?
Okay, I like it. Yeah. So as far as my basement, my floor is concerned, I think, I'm with you. I think they're still playoff teams. So I would imagine a wild card spot is in mind because, you got to ask yourself, Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis, are they better than Minnesota? Yeah, maybe not. But, as far as the ceiling is concerned, I think this team has a good opportunity. Yes, you're not going to replace 85 points from Kevin Fiala, but I think there's a good opportunity for a lot of these younger guys like Marco Rossi, Sam Steele, Matt Boldy to improve and go to those next levels. So for me, I think they're going to be right up there, close to Colorado at the end of the season, towards the top of the division, because I really like the way they play. They can play a fast, speedy game. They can play a grind-out game. And, I think Marc-Andre Fleury is going to play with a little chip on his shoulder this year, after Talbot sort of threw him some shade and left. So, I'll put them in probably – I'll give them a second round. I think they're a second-round team. I think they'll improve. They'll win a round.
Yeah, I guess I didn't say how far I thought they could go. I do think that they could win a round, too. I agree. I think the other teams around them in this division – have not gotten worse. Some of them you're like, well, they're pretty much the same, and that's fair. But why wouldn't you bring back that same team? So I think they certainly could win around. I think you go back to it, you play that series with St. Louis all over again, and Minnesota probably wins half the time, and St. Louis wins the other half the time. They were that close. So it's a very, very tight division. Okay, let's head back down into the cellar and go visit the Chicago Blackhawks. We won't spend too much time blasting the Blackhawks. We know what they're trying to do here. We know that they are trying to lose on purpose. When you go out and you're trying to put Mackenzie Entwistle into your top 9, you know that you're in an interesting position. A guy with 5 goals in 55 games there last season for the Blackhawks. This is not a good team, but they do have Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves at the top, and frankly, Athanasiou, Max Domi. I always butcher his name. Yugi Hara, right? That how you say it?
Yep. That is.
He's a UFA. Jack Johnson's a UFA. I know, analytics guys will cringe at the idea of him being traded to a team that they like to watch, but Jack Johnson will probably get dealt at the deadline. They have a lot of moves that they can do, and I think that's what is most interesting about this team. And it's going to be at the very top, where does Patrick Kane go? Because wherever he goes, you automatically probably put yourself above another team that you're close with, and that's huge come playoff time. So my question about the Blackhawks is, when and where does Patrick Kane get dealt?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, right, even for Jonathan Taves and Patty Kane's, both these guys, because of the size of their contract, and typically we see a lot of teams that, listen, there's a lot of, teams that are going to be competitive, that are going to be at the tops of their divisions, but they're just pressed up against the caps, right? Really the only teams that I think, outside of Colorado, you might look at, maybe a team like the New York Rangers, a team like, Nashville that has a little bit of space that might be able to make the moves. But most of your bottom teams that have the space to fit in a whole $10 million, right, like Buffalo, Arizona, Anaheim, aren't really going to be shopping for a guy like Patty Kane, right? They don't expect to be competitive, or, they might, Anaheim might think they're in the hunt, Buffalo might think they're in the hunt, but I think, come into the year, they're going to be out of it. So most teams are going to wait pretty dang close to the deadline, maybe a few weeks before, like we typically see one big move. But
they got to bank their salary cap money over time, yeah.
Yep, and you might see a third team get squeezed in there, right, to try to alleviate and take, a quarter of that cap hit. Because
how many teams can you trade to? You go from 10.
I don't know if there's a
5.25, and you get down to like 2.6, and then 1.3, and then what? 650K. Can you do that? Trade them with 4 teams?
Oh God, yeah. Listen, if I had to put my money on it right now, I think the Rangers are the front runner for Patty Kane, only because I want to see. They have a little bit of space now, but come playoff time, when we get towards the deadline, they'll need another guy, and I think I'm just dying to see a Panarin Kane reunion. I don't care who's playing center on that. So
that's why they're the favorites right now, though. It's mostly just because of that. Ultimately, though, it is going to come down to what another team can give the Blackhawks. Do the Rangers want to?
It doesn't even matter, because Patty Kane has a no movement clause. He controls his fate. He says where he wants to go, and the Rangers' Chicago's hands are pretty much tied, right? They can't go to the highest bidder.
It's true. If he says, I'll only get traded to the Rangers, well, yes, then you're right. Then they don't have any choice. But if he says, okay, well, what happens if the Colorado Avalanche come calling too? Are you going to say no to being a part of that run, and playing with those guys? And what happens if the Edmonton Oilers come calling? Or I don't know. There's all sorts of possibility. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they by the end of all this, could they have? They're right now they're $6 million over the cap.
Well, I imagine it's going to be a situation where it's going to be, Chicago's going to give permission to Patty Kane's agent to go talk to teams and find a trade, and they're going to basically figure out what each team envisions him to be, where they think he's going to play, et cetera, and then he's going to decide, like, hey, this is where I think is best suited for me, or where I have the best chance to win another cup. Yeah,
hey, I want to go play alongside Barkov and Tkachuk. Drop me on the right side of those.
Not too bad.
Beauties down there. You can never count out the Boston Bruins when it comes to big moves at the deadline either. They've done it multiple times. They've gone out. They get the best defenseman available last year in Hampus Lindholm. They've brought in Taylor Hall. They go out and get Charlie Coyle. They're always in on something at the deadline. So,
and with Hall and McAvoy being out for a while, on IR, they're going to free up a little bit of space there. So they'll probably have some money to play with for sure.
Now, and the Pittsburgh. What if the Penguins come calling? You go, bro.
I don't know how they fit that in there. To be quite honest,
play with us. But
wouldn't that be something? Crosby and Kaner on a line together.
All you do is you just, hey, all right, Jason Zucker, bye, and in comes Patty Kane. That's exactly the money you need, is a Jason Zucker and a Patrick Kane swap in terms of salary, and you're right there.
Okay.
You're good to go. I think that would be unbelievable if you had Crosby and Kane together. Oh, it'd be so
that would
fun.
be fun to watch.
I'm excited for that. That's probably the thing I'm most excited for the Chicago Blackhawks is when and where is Patrick Kane going to go, because you are automatically going to make whatever team gets Patrick Kane must watch TV. And then to a lesser extent, but also like not knocking Jonathan Toews, but I am curious as to where Toews ends up as well, because he's still, a serviceable forward, but it's tougher to look at him and go, all right, you had 37 points last year. Like we don't want you at 5. We don't even barely want you at 2.5, so it's going to be probably a little harder to get Jonathan Toews going somewhere. I could see a situation where they just can't really move him.
That very well could happen, right? And I think he's more likely to be a contender for like a 3-team swap, right? Yeah. Where some other team helps out with the cap. Because listen, I mean, any team would die to have him be their third line center, right? I mean, he would be ideal as far as
true.
You have an ideal face-off guy. Yeah. You have a guy who can play the penalty kill very well, and he can contribute on your second power play unit. I mean, Colorado, right? We talk about them missing a center. He could very well be a guy that slides in come playoff time and could really contribute to this team. Granted, I don't think he's got the speed that Colorado's looking for, but you never know.
That's true. Yeah, there's moves to be made. You could fit him under. All the Leafs have to do is get rid of Justin Hall, and they've got the room for Jonathan Toews as a third line center. I don't know.
That center depth would be outrageous.
Tavares and Toews and Matthews.
And Kemp on your fourth line. Stop it. That guy's,
Yeah, I don't know if that's where the Leafs would spend their time. Well, I mean, at that point, just go get Patty Kane. Convince him to come play with Matthews. Like, that would be probably the greatest American duo in the history of the game. Can you think of 2 American-born players playing on the same line together that would be more dynamic and better offensive weapons than those 2 together?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Let me know if you think of anything. And out there, if you can hit us at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter, and you can let us know if you have a past American duo that has. I was trying to think like who is. I guess like Mike Modano and Brett Hull. That's probably the best comparable I can think of. Well, I don't remember if they played together that much. On the power play they did. I feel like Brett Hull, did he play with Joe Nieuwendyk more? I don't remember. I'll have to look that up. That was a long time ago. That was in 1999. I was 13. Okay, well, let's obviously we know the Blackhawks, their basement is last place. Their ceiling is second last place. Something like that? Third last place?
Yep, I'd have to agree. No debate.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Good luck, Chicago Blackhawks. Hopefully you give many lesser players a career year and people get paid because of it. I guess that's the best thing that could happen. And, you get Connor Bedard.
There you go.
I definitely would rather Chicago get Connor Bedard than Arizona. I'm sorry. I don't care if I don't want the best player, a generational talent to go to Arizona.
No, Arizona doesn't care because Matthews is going to re-sign there after his contract.
No. Matthews will go there when he's like 38, and he's like, always wanted to don the Coyotes sweater, and now that I've won 4 cups with the Leafs, I can leave with my head held high.
You would love that.
I'd be fine with it. Okay, let's go. Last team, St. Louis Blues. Here we go. I want to start this conversation out by talking about the Blues ceiling. Let's start where we generally finish. What's your ceiling for the St. Louis Blues?
Ceiling. I think this team is going to regress a little bit, in my opinion. And I say that because they were one of the worst 5-on-5 teams in the NHL last year. Their defense was not the greatest 5-on-5. So when you look at what they had in net, I mean, listen, Ville Husso was a guy that was killing it as far as, 13.5 goals saved above average. Jordan Binnington negative 8.2. Does he get any better? I don't think so. I think Binnington is basically what he is at this point. He is what he is. He's going to be a roughly 905, 910 goaltender, I think. Which 910 is not bad, but now he's going to be expected to play a lot more. If they got the Binnington close to the playoff goaltender they got, then yeah, they'll be fine. But I don't think they're going to get that 949 save percentage goalie that was there in the playoffs. So Thomas Greiss is a huge waste of space, in my opinion. He's a few years removed from being anything relevant in this league. And, there's a reason Detroit cast him aside. Basically, if you think about it, basically Detroit and St. Louis just swapped goaltenders, Thomas Greiss for Ville Husso. So if there's not another reason for St. Louis to hate Detroit, it's this. But to me, I think because of the regression, the ceiling for this team is probably the 4 spot in this division. I think a team like Nashville, Dallas are going to be chomping at the bit to hop them in the standings, and I think one of them will.
Okay. Now, see, for myself, I look at this defense, and I think that the defense underperformed. I think Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, Colton Parayko, I think 3 of them do have there's something there, especially offensively with Falk and Krug. And I look at Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, and I think we've just seen the cusp, and I think there's more coming. And if you can get one more great year out of Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko, you've got kind of what appears to me to be, it's funny because it feels like Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko have been playing forever. They're only 30 and 31 years old. They're not that old, but certainly like once you hit 30, there tends to be a little bit of a regression in terms of offense. I think we've seen that a little bit with Ryan O'Reilly. Tarasenko just went and had one of the best years of his career last year, but if it seems to me to be this year of like, this might be our last shot with this group. Because is Ryan O'Reilly and Tarasenko, are they both coming back? I doubt it. Probably just one of them. Probably just
don't have the money for it.
Probably just Ryan O'Reilly. Tarasenko won it out just 18 months ago, and my guess is when push comes to shove, he'll find a new home. But I don't think he's going anywhere this year, and I think that they'll see this as like, this is my last chance to win in St. Louis. There's going to be a big focus. You get those 2 guys who are looking for a big contract out of this. I think that this team could surprise people. I know that 5-on-5 they were not great last year. Their power play was second best in the league, second only to the Leafs, who had almost a historic power play. They got below average goaltending for most of the year, and they were largely carried by their special teams, power play and penalty kill, and I don't think either of those 2 are going to really take a dip. They're going to continue doing what they do on the power play. Yes, they lost David Perron. That could certainly have an impact there, but I think that with Thomas and Kyrou taking over, I think they'll more than make up for David Perron, and I think that this team, other than Colorado, could be the 2 seed in this division, assuming that Jordan Binnington plays the way that he played. A 9 is average, a 910. That's what you need. You can't have 895 Jordan Binnington, or it was 901 last year. We can't have that. No, he's not going to be 949 like he was in the playoffs, but just a 910. And I think that they're probably in that 2-3 spot again, and could very well win a round, and then you got to play Colorado. And I'm not sure anyone in this division can beat Colorado.
Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you this then. Between Tarasenko and Ryan O'Reilly, because they obviously, I don't think there's any way they have the money to sign both of these guys. But then again, I said, there's no way they can sign Malkin and Letang, and Pittsburgh went out and proved me wrong. But between these two guys,
they were willing to take much less.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't think that's the case with a guy like Tarasenko or even Ryan O'Reilly. But between these two guys, if you have to re-sign one, who are you letting walk and who are you keeping?
Yeah, Ryan O'Reilly's your captain. So I think based on that, and I think he'll be much cheaper. I think he'll sign a deal less than his current one at 7.5. I think he signs for 6 or maybe even less. If assuming he kind of has this like, well, I've already gotten paid, like I'll take a little bit less to be able to squeeze everyone in here and to keep us competitive, that would be the case. Now, Tarasenko has been a Blue his whole life, and I think it'd be quite the story if after all this, wanting a trade, wanting out, they left him open at the freaking expansion draft. Did they? They did, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and he doesn't go. How stupid are you in Seattle? You didn't take Tarasenko. You could have had an 80-point player for free, and you instead they took Vince Dunn. Who not a bad player, but he's not Tarasenko. Anyways, man, it's tough to think of Tarasenko in another jersey, isn't it? He's been in St. Louis for 10 years. But I think that it's probably more likely they bring back Ryan O'Reilly. I don't know if Tarasenko wants to come back, even after all this, if he goes, I wanted to be traded and like, it's been a good run. It's been fun. We've been winning, but I don't actually want to live in St. Louis anymore. And I think maybe that was some of the reason, like just wanted to live somewhere else, be somewhere else. I don't know. I guess I'm saying Ryan O'Reilly because I think he'll be cheaper, and he's already come out and said, like, I'm not even worried about an extension. Like, it'll be fine. So I think he's probably got some nod from management that, like, yeah, we want to keep you. Like, don't worry about, we'll figure this out. And maybe they just want to see maybe he wants to see how he's going to play this year. If he can cash in here and make a little bit more and just re-up at 7.5, I think St. Louis would do it again for 3 or 4 years. Okay.
Yeah. I think term's going to be the big factor when it comes to both these guys, right? Because, obviously you don't want to give Ryan O'Reilly 8 years to bring him at 39. That's
not with the kind of traveling that his body's been through. Right. He's been through a lot.
But what I can see is them giving him a year or two more, similar to Letang and Malkin, to bring his cap hit down to make that work for him.
Sure.
That wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, me personally, I'd rather hold on to Tarasenko. I mean, you have Braden Shen, you have, Robert Thomas at center, so you got a good 1-2 punch. But again, Ryan O'Reilly's your captain. He brings a lot of other intangibles, whereas Tarasenko, you've kind of had a little bit of drama. He's, and his game's very one-dimensional, right? He's just going to go out there and score. And you know what you're getting with him, right? He's going to be a quality guy, but I don't know if they can afford to keep him and try to bring Ryan O'Reilly back into the fold. So we'll see. For me.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
I was just going to ask, between Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas, because they've obviously both signed deals right around the same time. Who do you think has a better year? Because both these guys, they've both been with the Blues for 4 years. Now that first year, was a little fewer games for Kyrou, only 16. But both these guys have been with the Blues for 4 seasons. And here we are, their 5th NHL season. They both put up 75 for Kyrou, 77 for Thomas. Who has a better season? And look, what are you expecting? Do we see last season as kind of like, all right, cool, we saw the ceiling for both these guys, or do we think there's more? Or what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think both these guys are pretty close to their ceiling. Point per game is not bad at all.
No, it's nothing to balk at.
Yeah.
No.
So 80-point players, I don't hate that at all. But I will say the one caveat to all this is I do think a guy like Jordan Kyrou in the long term is going to have more opportunity to be successful, because once a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko is gone, right, who's going to be that guy that steps up and takes his spot, right? Those minutes, who's going to fill in that scoring, right? I think Kyrou's got an opportunity there to maybe take more of an opportunity to, see more ice time as far as power play, stuff like that. And especially
be given the green light to shoot.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And especially too with a guy like, David Perron gone, who I think is going to be very, very missed, on that power play, led the team with 26 power play points. So, a guy like, Jordan Kyrou is going to be looked at to basically try to contribute a little bit more.
Right.
So I think he had more of an opportunity.
I feel like David Perron in the Red Wings power play is a low key little dark horse out there.
Yes.
Because Vegas's power play was fantastic, and he left, and it lost a step. You had, where was Vegas's power play last year? Now I know they had a lot of injuries, but they were 25th, 18% last year without Perron, and with Perron a couple years ago they were very good. He goes to Detroit. They really struggled on the power play last year, 26th, that's 16%. And, you wonder, can he go in there and kind of shake things up? They've got a lot of new pieces, so I imagine that their power play might take a little time to kind of all click together, but it'll be fun to see. If he truly is the power play whisperer that everybody says that he is, then Detroit, top 10 power play in the league with David Perron.
Boy, wouldn't that be nice? I mean, look, if you look at David Perron when he was in Vegas, let's see, 17, 18. I got to look at this stat now because it's gonna drive me nuts, right? Let's go all the way back, 17, 18 here. Vegas's power play that year was, drumroll please, sitting at 21%.
Yeah, pretty great.
So yeah, dropped quite a bit when he left, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, as a Detroit fan, that would be nice. But yeah, I think, as far as St. Louis is concerned, they're going to miss him a little bit. And then, again, you mentioned Falk, Krug, Parenko. I think these guys are going to be 30, 40-point guys. Again, they're going to give you, consistent production. You're going to get exactly the same thing out of them again this year, I think, which is all good, right? The question mark for me is Nick Leddy. Right, you signed him after trading for him at the deadline. You bring him in, you give him 4 times 4, which is a little questionable in my mind.
A big deal for Nick Leddy, yeah.
Right. He gave you 8 points in 20 games. Playoff time he was pretty good. 5 points.
That's it's almost a 40-point, 35, 40-point guy. Yeah.
Not the worst, but what David Perron or Nick Leddy are you going to get, right? So, obviously Marco Scandella is there. I think he's a candidate to maybe get moved. You still got Robert Bortuzzo there. They don't really have anybody that I can see coming in from the little leagues.
Leagues.
Yeah, to come up and, help out. So really they got to rely on their veteran guys to get it done. All these guys are between 29 and 31. So they should be right in their prime years, their best years, you would think.
I think what you're seeing here is this Central Division has been so good for so long. They've always had some of the great teams in this conference and in the league, and very consistent. Like, I know Colorado was last place in 15, 16 or whatever, but Colorado's been great since then. Minnesota's just makes the playoffs every year, and is always a threat to win a round or two. Same with St. Louis. Dallas obviously has been a fantastic team over the last 6-7 years, and Nashville's been there too. Despite having their one down year and last year coming out surprising everybody, and they look like a force at this point, especially Nashville wins 4-1 and everyone had a point except Roman Josi. So Roman Josi, they said a stat in the game. He was the first defenseman to have over 90 points since Ray Bourque in 1993.
Yeah, which I still don't know how he didn't win
the Norris. The Norris, yeah.
Robbed.
What I think we're seeing as a whole in this division is that this division is maybe the only division that actually, when you pull back, is worse. That this division is getting worse. It's aging up, and that there's a little bit here that says that the Pacific, well, they're the ones on the rise. It's tough when you're defending your crowns here, but the Pacific seems to be on the rise, got a lot of up and coming teams, and the Central has been this division of these several powerhouse teams duking it out, and we're starting to see cracks in the armor there. That there's some holes now in some of these teams. So and that's how I feel about St. Louis. Like, St. Louis is still going to be really good, but there's some holes there. and that they're starting to be exposed. And now I think come playoff time, this isn't a team I want to play. Because I think that they could beat anyone. I mean, they beat Colorado 2 seasons ago, and Colorado wasn't that different from the Colorado that they were last year when they won the Cup. So there certainly is lots to behold with this Blues team. They're a very good team. They very well could be the team if a lot has to go right, but it's not crazy to say they could be the team that represents the West in the finals. I don't think that they will, but they're good enough to win 2 rounds here to me. Okay,
so where's the floor for this team then?
I mean, I don't think that the Blues are missing the playoffs. I just there hasn't been enough movement in this division to where there's no. You look at the Atlantic and you go, well, Ottawa got better, Detroit got better, Buffalo got better. Everyone's getting better. In the Central, Arizona got worse somehow. My God, Chicago got worse. Winnipeg probably got worse. Nashville, I'd say Nashville probably got better. Nino Niederreiter scored a beauty of a goal today, and he's going to be a nice addition to that offense. Actually, give Nashville some offense. Did the Dallas Stars get better? I don't think so. They lost John Klingberg, and I know they brought in Mason Marchment, but I don't think that Dallas is necessarily better. They just have so many. They're so handcuffed with that Benn and Sagan contracts. I don't think St. Louis got better. I don't think Minnesota got better. I don't think Colorado got better. I don't think they really got worse, but I don't think they got better. So there's just probably not going to be a whole lot of movement in this division. So when I look at St. Louis, I see a team that can still be one of the top teams in this division.
Okay. Yeah. For me, though, honestly, my floor for this team is missing the playoffs, right? Just being a couple points out, if I'm being honest.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We value
That's
that
what the
here
viewers
at
want.
Overtime Hockey Talk.
Yeah, the listeners want honesty. So, when I look at this division, right, I'm kind of with you. I don't think, teams in this division got, drastically better where they're serious threats to the St. Louis team. But on the flip side of that, there's always going to be a team every single year that just sort of bottoms out, kind of surprises people, right? I mean, like last year, Chicago, I expected them to contend for a playoff spot, and they completely bottomed out, right? Same with, Montreal.
But Chicago on paper got better, right? Like they got Seth Jones. Like there was a lot of moves that they had made, and you're like, oh, this team's going to be better. Whereas St. Louis didn't really do a whole lot to get. No. But so the big thing for me though is I just think the goaltending is too much of a question mark for me. If I had to, look at goaltending tandems throughout the entire league, I would probably put them in the bottom 5-6 of this league with that pairing. And, for a team that played so poorly 5-on-5, didn't really make any adjustments coaching wise, that's a problem for me. And I think, again, depending on how the season starts off, if they're playing horrible to start the year, I think management is, might look at possibly moving, a Tarasenko at some point to try to shake things up, right? If the rails are, coming off, if the team's not really playing well, right? That's really the only piece you have to make a drastic move, mid-season, right? Maybe Ivan Barbashev, you could move him at some point, and try to bring in another piece up front if you wanted to. But really, if you want to bring something in to shake things up, moving a Tarasenko out for maybe another piece or a young player, somebody to come in and compete for ice time would be the way to do it. But ultimately, I think it's all going to go back on goaltending, and to me, this goaltending is not that reliable, and I don't trust it, and so. That being said, I think there's a real possibility they could miss the playoffs by a point or two. Okay. Yeah, I was, I was just thinking about the coaching staff in St. Louis, and who they brought in as an assistant coach this year? Is Craig McTavish.
That's right, they did. Yeah. You're right.
Former GM of the Edmonton Oilers. So it'll be very interesting to see. What his role is for this team, because you had Steve Ott and Larry Robinson. Obviously, Larry Robinson gets to do whatever he wants.
I like Steve Ott. He's
Steve Ott with the penalty. Like their special teams were fantastic. So Craig McTavish comes in, and you hope that he can be I guess a coach to those younger defensemen too, as he was a defenseman in the NHL, and it'll be interesting to see what he does, because he has been, the last time he was a head coach was 2009. So it's been a minute. He's been a senior vice president, a GM, and so he's moved around. So it'll just be interesting to see where he goes. It's actually his first gig in hockey since 2019. So
yes. Well, and here's the other thing too that I forgot to even mention. Last year we had 5 teams in the Central and 3 in the Pacific, and with Vegas, Vancouver all getting better, all these teams in the Pacific moving up, it's. I think we're probably going to see a 4-4. So
100%. Yep. 100%.
If anybody's out, really, if I had to pick somebody, St. Louis could be a prime candidate for that. If not, maybe Dallas. But yeah. So we'll see.
Okay, love it. All right. Well, there is the first part of the Central Division preview. Stay tuned for part 2, and then we'll be on to the Atlantic. And who knows, we might be into the season by the time we get to the Atlantic, but that's fine. We don't care. We'll still preview the division and enjoy. What's tomorrow? Another game between the San Jose Sharks and the Nashville Predators. That bitter rivalry between those two teams. I will say one last comment. When Tomas Hertl scored to tie at 1-1, he's a Prague native. The crowd went insane. It was very fun to see, and so did Hertl. Hertl knew the significance of the goal, and it was fun. So I do like the NHL going and playing where some of these guys grew up, and people watch them play junior hockey and into the professional leagues that are over there. But I enjoyed seeing that. Oh, Justin, any last thoughts?
No, just looking forward to the season getting going. I've got tickets to go to the home opener for Detroit, so should be good fun.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no, my nephew is playing between the periods with his.
Oh, that's right. Team, yeah, that's so cool. That'll be so fun. That's awesome. Well, all right. Well, thanks for listening to our listeners. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for listening to me.
Hey,
I know it's hard, and we will talk to you very soon. Follow us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Have a great rest of your day.